Good evening, friends. As we have been seeing and hearing a lot, that how the tourism industry is exploding not only in India, but all over the world. And we had also heard the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, also speaking about that how the tourism industry is flourishing. And he took, like we had medical tourism and then health. Now he said that the cultural tourism has also grown with the cult of people like Diljit Dosanjh, etc., taking up things. With that facet, there is also one flip side of that, where there's exploitation of children in this tourism industry. We thought, why not take a niche area with Advocate Dr. Vidya Selvamony, who's a visiting faculty at CMR University, School of Legal Studies, and we have seen that we have done various sessions with the CMR University. This was the topic during her doctorate. Therefore, we requested her that let's take a deeper dive into the subject, which a lot of people have not heard about. We received messages on that aspect also. That is quite an area where there's not much topic seen or discussed as such. Without taking much time, I will request ma'am to take over the session. And we are thank you to Professor Subramanian to introduce her. And she had already done one session with us, which is already doing well. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vikas. Good evening to all of you. And today I will be talking about broadly the aspect of how children are exploited in the tourism industry. While we understand how tourism industry is, every one of us have a very positive view of tourism, how tourism is. When we think tourism is one of the largest employment provider, and it helps in contributing for GDP of the country. It generates income, it promotes cultural identity, it also improves infrastructure in a particular place, it enhances the foreign exchange, and it also gives a lot of positive vibes on how in our country we are promoting tourism to the extent of tourism is, we are calling everyone to come to a country that tourism is so exhaustive. We have diverse nature of tourism. So do come and visit us. And it is both national and international. Tourism is flourishing, and it is one of the fastest growing industry in our country. While we talk about tourism as very positive, just to highlight that tourism, while it is developing in a very positive nature, it also brings in lot of concerns like negative impacts. It brings a lot of negative impacts pertaining to environmental issues. It brings a negative impact on the economic situation of the people. It has social impacts. It has cultural impacts and various other forms of impacts where local communities are affected. Today, I will be only sharing with you on the aspect of social concern, how tourism is having a negative side while it's developing on the aspect of social impact. The most important aspect of social impact is tourism impacts women and children, of which I will be addressing only how it is addressing exploiting children in tourism. There is a lot of studies. Just to start with, how do we break the myth? When we go and talk to someone that tourism is a cause of exploitation or it has a negative impact, there are many of them who do not want to acknowledge that tourism also contributes for any form of exploitation, because they always see tourism is a very positive one, and they never even want to acknowledge that tourism is a cause and for a concern which is also exploiting our environment, social economy of the society. While this was the situation, there are a lot of studies which has been undertaken by various organizations and by the government itself. I will just take you through various studies of how they have to try their hard to make them understand that tourism is also a cause of concern. One of the study which took place is in Goa, which is in 1991, where the first pedophile case in Goa, which was identified, of one person called Mr. Ph.D. He was running an orphanage in Goa, where he and his friends, there were 6 of them running an orphanage. While in the orphanage, they were exploiting many children in the orphanage. It was mostly boys' children, and this was sexual exploitation of children. While we tell sexual exploitation of children, they were harassed, they were raped, they were harassed, physically harassed, verbally harassed, or forced to commit pornographic materials as well, sexually explicit materials as well. And to this particular orphanage, there were visitors from across the country and across from the world as well. They had visitors from Australia, from New Zealand, from Germany, and various other parts of the country, Thailand. But however, this particular issue, one of the child who came out of this particular orphanage went through a help of a non-government organization, CRG. They went and they told that there is an issue which is going on in this orphanage. And finally, a complaint was given and they caught Frederick Peets and his other 6 friends. In out of which they had convicted Frederick Peets in the trial court, and he applied for bail, and subsequently bail was also rejected and he underwent a sentence. While this was a situation, there are a number of other cases also in Goa where their pedophile was growing extensively in Goa. But to tell, it is not only an issue in Goa, it is also an issue across our country. While we have the other studies which I will share, it also explains that how sexual exploitation of children happens in various parts of our country. It happens in Orissa, it happens in Karnataka. When I tell Orissa, Karnataka, it is not the entire state, in few tourism destinations. It happens in Orissa, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Goa, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, and much more. Many more places it happens. But how does it happen? It has different types of tourism. You have cultural tourism, you have coastal tourism, you have heritage tourism, you have pilgrim tourism. So irrespective of what type of tourism, how you coined the name is not important. But in these diverse places, where it be coastal, where it be heritage, where it be pilgrim, where it be cultural heritage, wherever it is, there is a form of exploitation of children. The next study, also undertaken by one of the organization called Equations, they highlighted that this particular value told exploitation of children, it is not only by foreign tourists, domestic tourists are also equally involved in exploitation of children. Along with that, there was one more finding to highlight that it is not only female children who gets affected, it also affects the male children of our society. Apart from this, there is a study which was conducted by National Human Rights Commission, National Commission for Women, Ministry of Women and Child. This study was undertaken in the year 2007. It's also called as the National Study on Child Abuse. This study's finding was a very alarming finding because the Ministry of Women and Child took sample size of 13 states from across India, and the findings were that more than 53% of our children were sexually abused. And apart from that, the report also stated more than 71.6% of the children who were abused were male children, while compared to 65% were female children. And these were the children who were harmed and who have reported repeated abuse as well. And also in the study, which also told that many children are affected with drug abuse, and most of the children were from street children who did not have parents or any guardian to take care of them. So this is a study by the Ministry of Women and Child, which also sent an alarming message to our country, while to talk about 71% of our children are sexually abused, which is not a small number. This study further was enhanced, and the ministry took a lot of actions to come up with national plan of action and to how to combat these form of exploitation. Along with this, there were other studies which also seconded the findings of National Ministry of Women and Child. The other studies which seconded them were the study which was committed by an Equations, an organization in Bangalore. They did a study on coastal sex tourism. And this is commissioned by National Commission for Women. And this particular study highlighted the prevalence, how it is prevalent that child sexual abuse and prostitution is happening in Puri, state of Orissa. And that research also showed enough evidence on male child sexual abuse as well. The other study was again done by Equations. equations repeatedly we are using because equation is the only organization in the country which works on tourism and its impacts. So the other study which was done by equations was specifically with related to situation analysis of children and child sex tourism pertaining to Goa and Kerala. This study, the major findings were that there is child sexual abuse, which is happening across Kerala and Goa as well, and children are also used for labor. So when they're brought into in the form of labor, and subsequently they are subjected to some form of sexual abuse. This next study, which was facilitated by an organization called ECPACT International, ECPACT is End Child Prostitution, Pornography and Trafficking of Children for Sexual Purpose. This is a network-based organization working situated in Thailand. So this organization also commissioned various studies. And in those studies also, it showed that children are sexually exploited in tourism. In 2006, there was yet another study by National Human Rights Commission, which they very clearly told the sexual exploitation of children are happening in the form in Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Pondicherry, Kovalam, and they are increasing over the period of time and becoming a destination for child prostitution as well. And the National Human Rights Commission study was also one of the yet another aspect which they published was many children were missing in our country. And to compare that, the average number of 44,000 children go missing in the country every year. And these children, only 11,000 children out of 44, they sometimes get tracked. So the rest of the children are not tracked. So they don't know where they are missing, whether they are exploited, whether they're taken through trafficking means out of the country or within the country, if they are subjected to any form of abuses, that is also not known. So this, along with sexual exploitation of children by tourism, the other aspect which was found out by National Human Rights Commission was also pertaining to missing children, was yet another alarming trend of children, how they are missing. Then the next study, which was done in the August 2012, there was a lot of studies like this. So one of the questions which were raised during the parliamentary session was, what is the government doing to protect children? Well, because most of the studies have highlighted and the information has already reached them. So they also tried to tell that they are doing policy enhancements, and they're also increasing the funds for rehabilitative homes for the children, and they're also promoting educations, and there will be much more education so that children will not get into any form of exploitation and there will not be any more child labor. So these were certain answers which we got from a lot of parliamentary standing committee members. But however, one of the reasons what they've quoted also is trafficking is the process in the answer, one of the answer which they gave, they have quoted trafficking is the process which may result in any kind of exploitation or might be for kind of exploitation. If we consider that the majority of children are going missing or run away to become victims of one or other exploitative situation, it can be safely said that majority of missing children can be victims of trafficking. So this acknowledgement itself paved a way of positive step towards combating how to combat these form of exploitations. Then in 2013, there is Justice Verma Committee, which also emphasized and highlighted that human trafficking is a major concern, and human trafficking is a form of commercial sexual exploitation of young children and women in our country. The next one was a very important judgment, which was by Bachpan Bacha Andolan, which also formed initially, they also took up this particular issue of child labor. And so, well, child labor are subjected to different form of sexual abuse as well. So while these were the main trends which we underwent, one of the important aspect with compared to all these studies, what was figured out was when we talk about sexual exploitation of children in tourism industry, it is not only that they are exploited. There are different forms of exploitation, and the different forms of exploitation where the children were sexually exploited, the children were subjected to child pornography, and then online exploitation of children, and then they coined a word called as child sex tourism in major tourism destinations. and orphan children were always showcased as a product for tourists to enjoy. And then child marriage was yet another concern. Child trafficking was a concern, and then child labor. So there were around 7 to 8 aspects of how different forms of child exploitation used to take place in the name of exploitation of children in tourism. And this entire findings were through different researches which we came to know. And the other important reason, when we try to find out what was the cause for sexual exploitation of children in tourism, there are multiple factors. The main important cause was they felt that there is inequality between male and children. While we tell inequality, the other concern what was raised was when a tourist is taking a child, girl child, the people are seeing why is the girl child going with someone unknown person. But it's the same thing when the child is going, a male child is going with a tourist, they are not concerned. They think friendly they are going, but they are not understanding that male children are also equally vulnerable for these form of exploitations. And the next issue was highlighted was poverty and the family's vulnerable situations. Then it was the population is high, there is a lot of unemployment, or they are having, specifically in coastal belts, they are having fishing only for some period of time. And the rest period of time, they have no other form of employment, or they are not occupied. So the only sector which is occupied is tourism, because the other half, they have a lot of tourists coming into their destination. So the children don't go to school. They leave the school and they go to beaches or any other place to sell trinkets, to sell balloons, or to sell the chocolates, or to go with them as tour guides. And then they are also subjected to various forms of exploitation. And then they also for commodification, sexual commodification of children's bodies. And then there are also issues of migration. The migration population, huge influx, because of which the children are going unnoticed, or because of the issue of migration, they don't get admission in new schools. So what they do, they accompany the parents for some time while going for labor work, or sometimes they're sitting idly in the house, because of which they also have peer pressure. They will also try to see where their friends are going, and then they also try to get involved in the activities which the peer pressure also pushes them. So these are few important causes of sexual exploitation of children in tourism. And then other form of exploitations where the impact of HIV/AIDS on working children. Many of the children who are working in small eateries, hotels, dabas, they are also subject to HIV/AIDS, and then they are not inclusive. They have loss of access to social development. That is also yet another problem. And then working children are working in a very extremely difficult working conditions, and then their family, as I told you, the family situation are not conducive to them. So the parents in certain instance push the children to go for work, and they don't try to find out how the child is earning money. But however, that income is a support for the family. So they are not taking that particular, how the child is earning money is not taken into consideration, while that particular money which the child is bringing into the family, as the family enhance, the economic situation is becoming better, that is the only thing which they are also looking at. And then there is always a myth in the country which tells that if you have sex with a minor child, a virgin child, then it will cure HIV/AIDS. That this myth continued even today. It is not a myth long before and now it is not there. This is the myth which continued even till today, because of which when you see the children who are exploited, their ages are much low. It is not that 18 years old child is exploited. The exploitation is always below 15 years of age. The other important finding of why trafficking is increasing in tourism is because of the important reason is because of for sexual exploitation, for sex tourism, then for illegal adoption, for child marriage, for domestic work, and for begging, and for organ transplantation and trafficking of children. So these are few reasons why the children are also trafficked from one particular place to another. And the other one is for online exploitation of children in tourism. Most of the children who are facing sexual exploitation are also victims of sexual online exploitation, because they take their photographs or they take their nude photographs while conducting sexual activity is undergoing, or they take their only nude photos or any other parts of the photos, and then they also threaten these children in one form or the other. So online exploitation of children in tourism, the various thing was, it is pertaining because of poverty, and then because the children, most of the children are living and working in streets, and then the gratification issue that I get something better, and then the inadequate laws are also one of the reasons why there is a lot of online exploitation of children. And then these children are also used for many other aspects, for luring or for also increasing their networks. Like today, they will bring one child, this child will bring yet another child, and that child will bring yet another child. So the exploitators are it's an organized form. So they know if one person, they bring at least 3-4 children will come into with one child. So that was the form of exploitation. And the other important aspect was, when we try to understand why this is happening, there are also few children who shared that this is not new for us. And in my house, I don't get food to eat. I don't get proper, beautiful clothes to wear. But that particular person, that uncle, is giving me everything. And what only in return I give a sexual favor, what he asks. So that is nothing for them. So that's how in certain children, when they shared, it was shocking to hear that, but that's the reality which they shared as well with us. But with these situations, and these are the various factors why in our country sexual exploitation of children were happening. But however, to continue with that, there are a lot of international conventions and protocols which also try to look into the aspect of how we can combat child exploitation in general. One of the important international convention is United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which was ratified in 1985. It spoke about welfare, prevention, protection, welfare, rehabilitation of children from any form of exploitation, and it also promoted right to education. Education is a must for children. The other important protocol was the optional protocol of the sale of the children, child prostitution, and child pornography, which India ratified in the year 2002. This optional protocol is an optional protocol to the UNCRC, and this particular protocol specifically administered what are the administrative measures to combat. It also told educational measures to increase awareness and legislative measures to combat these issues, along with how does social measure also help to combat. Apart from this, there are a lot of international conventions like ILO conventions, which try to stop child labor, eradication of child labor working in worst forms, and to enhance the child labor age from 14 to 18 years. There are a lot of international ILO conventions. And then there is one more important convention, which is United Nations Conventions, again, transnational organized crimes, and its protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in person, especially women and children. So this protocol was very important protocol which India ratified, due to which we defined what is trafficking in our country. And subsequently, this also enhanced the definition of trafficking based on the international standards. And the other protocol was protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in person, especially women and children. This in 2000 we ratified. And then there were a lot of guidelines which National Human Rights Commission brought specifically on human rights and human trafficking. And then there was also Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So these are some of the international conventions which acknowledged and they wanted to prevent and protect children from further exploitation. And there, when we talk about conventions, internationally also there are some countries which is in their law, specifically in their legislation, they have defined child sex tourism. So which are the countries which have identified that tourism is a contributor for exploitation of children are the main country is Thailand. They have an act titled the Prevention and Suppression of Human Trafficking. Act 2008. This act has defined how tourism is contributing for exploitation and what measures can be taken for this to combat this. Second, it is Cambodia. Cambodia have a specific legislation on child sex tourism named as suppression of human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Then you have Philippines, have two important acts. Both the acts talks about child sex tourism and combating. One is Anti-Trafficking in Person Act and the Special Protection of Children Against Abuse, Exploitation and Discrimination Act. The other country is Vietnam. Vietnam have law on child protection, care and education. So that these are certain international other countries which they have defined child sex tourism. And there are also many other countries where they have realized that sexual exploitation of children is a serious concern. And the other countries which are defined is Burma, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, and Singapore. These are also the countries which have defined child sexual exploitation and measures to combat child sexual exploitation. Well, this was governing many countries because the international act also speak about how to combat. Apart from that, just give me 1 minute. While they have acknowledged that child sex tourism is a concern, and they've also told about measures how to combat, there was that international ECPACT international organization, which came out with a code.org. This code.org was a very positive move where they had 84 countries, members from 84 countries. India was also, in India, 4 organizations were also part of ECPACT. So what did this code.org try to do is they developed 6 important criteria and how to involve these criteria where they wanted to make tourism industry accountable. And how to make them accountable, they developed this criteria. 1, 2, they should have a specific code for protection of children in every tourism industry, may it be single star, 3-star, 7-star hotel. Everyone should have a child protection policy. And then they also told that every officer working in that organization, they are supposed to be trained on this child sexual policy or child protection policy. And well, they tell they have to be trained from the reception, from the security to the housekeeping, the room keeping, everyone till the food supply, everyone were supposed to be trained in every industry. Why they are supposed to be trained is in their room or in the premises of that particular hotels, if they see any suspicious behavior by any person bringing in a child to a hotel, then it is their duty to report. For that, an awareness program to be conducted to everyone working in that particular industry. And then if they find any suspect, they can also report to the management or they can report to the immediately the child line or any police station. And they also told that every tourism industry need to be zero tolerance of child sexual abuse. And they are willing to support, collaborate, and engage with various other stakeholders to combat these form of exploitation. So this was a code. So if you become registered, the tourism industry, when you register, you get something called as code.org. And you will get, it will be like a credit given to you that you are also you have subscribed to the idea of code.org, and that will enhance your marketing marketings as well. In similar lines to International Code of Conduct, Government of India, in the year 2000, came out with a code of conduct for safe and honorable tourism. And this code of conduct, Ministry of Tourism, along with UNODC and PETA, this particular code came out. But however, this was a very short span. It came out in the year 2010. It lasted for 2011. After that, there is nothing which is happening subsequent to that. But it is one positive sign is Ministry of Tourism, Government of India has acknowledged that tourism is a concern, and tourism is a reason also for exploitation of children. Earlier, till 2010, they used to deny, telling that tourism is no way concerned, and why should we be in tourism is not exploiting children, and why should we come into that particular thing for protecting children? They denied acceptance So this code of conduct was a sign of positivity. Once you accept, you can start working on combating. So we felt that this code of conduct for safe and honorable tourism was at a move like that, where the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, acknowledged very clearly that tourism is a cause of concern, and they are also a reason why sexual exploitation of children are taking place. And they came out with something called as Suraksha under the Safe and Honorable Tourism Code. And the objective of this code was to prevention of prostitution, sex tourism, and forms of sexual exploitation like assault and molestation in tourism to safeguard the safety of a person. This was one of the main objectives. The second objective of this particular code was to enhance prevention of activities like forced or involuntary drugs use, manipulated, and incorrect information, cultural and social intolerance, which could where the vulnerability of the crime and particularly women and children of local people are increasing. So there, one of the two important objective was to protect all these forms, children and women from these form of exploitation. This was taken as a welcome move, and it was also taken as a positive move because Ministry of Tourism acknowledged that particular aspect. So these were the two important positive code of conducts which we have. One is the international, the code.org, which is across the 84 countries which the tourism industry signed to the code. And the safe and honorable tourism is within our country in India, where the tourism industry, they are rated when they're given stars for hotels. If they are also subscribing to safe and honorable tourism, they are also given a higher rating in their hotels. So these both were looking as a positive side. Now, to come back from tourism industry, which are the laws in our country which governs exploitation of children in tourism? The important aspect is as we ratified UNCRC, most of the things are also CRC is also applicable to our country, and the two optional protocols. One is on pornography, and the other one is on trafficking. These two also played a very prominent role in amending our legislations in our country. Apart from this, we have the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act and the Child Labor Act. The Child Labor Act, Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986, also acknowledged under the Schedule 2, very clearly they told children working in hospitality industry, they brought them into hazardous occupation. And they told any children employed in dabas, roadside eateries, restaurants, hotels, motels, tea shops, resorts, SAPs, or other recreational centers. So anywhere these children are working in this sector, they are also comes under hazardous occupation. So the children are not supposed to work. This amendment took place in the 2016 to the Child Labor Act, which was yet another important move by the government to show that how tourism is leading for exploitation, and how they need to be protected came later. But this only they acknowledge that yes, tourism is an industry which needs to come into hazardous occupation, and with children working in these particular roadside eateries, dabas, restaurants, hotels, motels are also subjected to various forms of sexual exploitation. And the other act is our constitution speaks about it, our article 15.3, 21, 24, 39A. I'm not going into constitution much, but however, the other important legislation is Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. Even before I come into this, there is one special act called as the Goa Children's Act 2003. Goa Children's Act is the first legislation in our country which recognized that tourism is a cause of concern, and there are a lot of tourists who are exploiting children, and there should be a punitive section for the people who are exploiting the children in Goa. Specifically, this act is only applicable in Goa, and this particular act also the first legislation in our country which took stringent measures on the exploiters. And they also told not only exploiters, any person who comes to know, like for example, if a hotel industry come to know that this particular tourist is accompanied with a child, then immediately if they have any doubt, or if they feel the child was not safe with that person, then immediately they need to report. If a child is taken to any particular orphanage, the orphanage is supposed to report. And if the child is taken, if any photo studio, if they go for washing a particular photo, negatives of that particular child, and if the photographer, while developing the studio, if they see that some children's explicit photographs are there, then immediately the studio owner should immediately call the police and inform. So these were certain measures in Goa Children's Act which they had prominently played, and because of these measures there were a lot of complaints also which got registered under your Goa Children's Act. And subsequently, after this, many years after Goa Children's Act came with the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. Certain positive measures were also in this particular act as well, where they very clearly told that they are two important aspects what this particular act very told, that is, no children should be subjected to any form of sexual exploitation, harassment, and various other aspects. But they also told that two important aspect was children should not be taken for any sexual gratification. And they told representation of sexual organs of the children is a violation, and then usage of child engaged in real or stipulated sexual acts is an offense, and the indecent or obscene representation of a child shall be guilty of the offense of using a child for pornographic purpose. So this particular act emphasized a specific section, that is section 13 of your Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, highlighted child pornography as a concern, and they brought into that as particular form of punitive punishment section. And then the other section which they brought us was specifically obligation of media, studio, and photographic facilities to report cases. So any person in the media or hotels or lodges or hospitals or clubs or studios or photographic facilities, by whatever name it is called, irrespective of the name, they are supposed to report in case if there is a doubtful situation which they come across. If they do not report, then they are also against them also you can file a complaint and stringent action will be taken against them also. Jointly and severally they are also held liable. So these are certain sections under your Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, which is highlighted the factor that directly or indirectly tourism sector is also a contributor. So we need to be careful and protect our children. And the other important as a law is the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which came up in the year 2023. Now we have a separate section from section 63 to 91, specifically for offenses against women and children. And under that, they have come out with a special section for offenses against children, that as well they talk about pornography, sexual abuse, and labor or any other forms of abuse of children is an offense in our country. So that's also an act which talks about sexual abuse. And the other legislation is our Information Technology Act. Information Technology Act is under your section 67B, which has defined again what is pornography, and it will also defined about explicit materials. If anyone is showing, taking, transporting any explicit materials, then that is also an offense in our country, along with section 13 to 15 of the act, which I also told that how pornographic materials, if anyone is engaged in taking, showing, or viewing any of this, it is also an offense in our country. Apart from this, there are two more legislations. One is the Child Rights Amendment Act 2019, which also very clearly has highlighted there is a need to protect the right of all the children in India. In this act, what they've tried to emphasize is crimes like child sexual abuse, child pornography, and child engaging in any of these activities should be protected. And the other act is Infant Labor Prohibition Act, which also tells there is increasing number of child labor cases, child sexual abuse cases, and child pornography cases. To combat that, this particular legislation is also playing a proactive role. While this was only from legislative friends, there are also other plan of actions, regulations, guidelines passed by Ministry of Women and Child, National Commission for Women, National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, or various other studies and reports they've taken into consideration, and they have come with plan of action to combat trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation of children in women and children. They have come out with a lot of plan of action as well. So with all these, we have laws in the place. We have the situation of why children are entering into various form of exploitation. So the analysis has been that the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act is a very welcoming legislation, because there are two important prominent sections which are addresses overall sexual exploitation, but specifically with related to tourism as well. It acknowledges, and it also is part of the act. So it's a welcoming move. But however, the mechanisms for protection of children is still there are a lot of gaps in mechanisms. And then the other thing is still tourism is a factor of contributing for sexual exploitation. So that is, though we have acts and as I told you, mechanisms are not there. So still it is not looked into as a very serious concern. And then very less reported cases. Even when I told you there is Goa Children's Act in Goa, which is predominantly looking at children, even that particular act, there were very few cases cases were reported, but conviction rates were very less. Similarly, specifically when we talk about Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, how many tourists are exploiting children? We don't have any data to tell tourist is the person who is exploiting children. But overall exploitation, we have statistical data. But tourist as an exploitator, we don't have statistical data. So that statistical data is also yet another lacking information in our country. And then the other important gap is there is no collaboration between each departments. Like Department of Labor does not collaborate with Ministry of Women and Child. Ministry of Women and Child does not collaborate with Ministry of Tourism. Ministry of Tourism does not collaborate with Information Technology. So each departments or each ministries are working in isolations. So if they work together, might be they can come out with a bit more strategizing plan of action of how together they can work. We have anti-trafficking cells. The anti-trafficking cells also work in isolation for trafficking issues. Various bodies we have, but none of them are working in together. They are not collaborating with each other. So these were one few analysis which we also figured out while doing our research. Then apart from that, there are very, very positive how judiciary has played a very forefront in dealing with problems related to child exploitation. Specifically, there are very few cases in our country. There are around 12 to 13 cases in our country where they have highlighted tourism as a factor for exploitation, and where the Honorable Supreme Court has also very clearly given guidelines and certain recommendations of how to combat it. One of the important case was the re-exploitation of children in orphanage in state of Tamil Nadu versus Union of India. This case is specifically related to cases in Mahabalipuram, Tamil Nadu. What happened there was many children were in orphanage. And in this orphanage, there were a lot of tourists who were coming to the orphanage, and these children were exploited in the orphanage itself. And evenings, these children are taken to the beaches to sell certain things or to give pamphlets telling that I'm an orphan, take care of me, give me money. And they were begging to the tourists. And the target were foreign tourists. And there were the findings of the National Commission of Protection of Women and National Commission on Protection of Children, Child Rights, very clearly told that this particular orphanages, it is not one orphanage, multiple orphanages in Mahabalipuram are doing this. They are using children for begging, and they're also welcoming the tourists to come to the orphanage to select a child whom they want, and they can have sexual intercourse with that particular child as well. So once they figured out this particular case went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court very clearly told that this is not permitted. And they very also told that Juvenile Justice Act needs to play a very detailed procedures need to be established, and they told the union government and the state government to go in for periodical reviews to orphanages. And yet another important shocking factor in Pondicherry, Mahabalipuram was many of these orphanages were not registered as well. So in the name of orphanage, they were exploiting children. So this was one of the important case in our country, which very clearly highlighted the Juvenile Justice Act is in space, but still children are exploited by foreign tourists. And then there were stringent measures by the court to tell that there should be periodical reviews and to close down all the organizations who do not have licenses. And and none of the tourists should come to the orphanages. They also pass guidelines. And then the other important case is Sampurna Bekur versus Union of India. In this particular case, it was a case pertaining to sexual assault of girls in girls' hostel, which was located in Nizapur in Bihar. So how that particular children are again exploited in hostel by various people. And this was it was a public interest litigation which was filed. And here yet another important directions given was the police superintendent and the chief secretary of the state has to implement Juvenile Justice Act in true letter and spirit, not formality sakes, but they should really work hard to combat these. The next case was Fedri Peaks versus state of Goa, where in Goa, in the state of Goa, they figured out that Fedri Peaks was exploiting lot of children. And along with exploitation, he was also taking pornographic materials of children, and he was making good money from that. He used to send this to across international friends and across people, across to various people from other countries, and he used to make. And then these photographs were sent, and he used to call the tourists from other countries, telling that you can select a child and you can come and enjoy with that particular child in his orphanage. So he was caught, and then he was caught under the Goa Children's Act. And then you had yet another case is Childline India Foundation and others. This is also called as the famous Anchorage case, where the children homes in Maharashtra, where children were exploited there. So this, the Honorable Supreme Court very clearly told that well, you're giving shelter for children. It is a duty of the person who's giving shelter to also protect children so that the children are not subjected to further and further abuses in this particular area. Then the other case which was come was Switzerland Swiss couples pornographic case, where husband and wife both were involved in taking nude photographs. They were not exploiting children physically, but they were taking children's photographs, and they used to upload online, and they were making good money from this. However, they both were caught by Mumbai police, and they were subjected to rigorous imprisonment. They were punished for that particular period. Then there's other important case of Re Prajwala, letter dated 18/3/2015, videos on sexual violence and recommendation. So this is also yet another important judgment, which Prajwala is an organization working in Andhra Pradesh, where they try to tell that a suo motu petition was filed based on this particular letter of Prajwala, and the opposite parties were Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, Yahoo, and Microsoft. And they were named as parties in this particular case. And the court mandated the creation of a commission to advise it on the validity of the prohibition of distribution of videos featuring rape, gang rape, and child pornography. So the Supreme Court banned these particular things in these social medias as well. The other one is Bachpan Bacha Andolan versus Union of India. In this particular case, a non-government organization, Bachpan Bacha Andolan, filed a petition before the Supreme Court. And this was with the children working in labor, abnormal labor conditions, where they were treated very badly. And how the labor department, though they catch these children, employer, they are allowed scot-free by paying a very minimal fees. But these children's exploitative situation leads the children to further and further abuse, or they are also forced to having mental trauma or psychological disorder, various other forms. So this was also highlighted in Bachpan Bacha Andolan's case, where the Supreme Court also very clearly told that it is a child labor is not permitted in our country. However, if children, the source of any other form of crime, the child starts as work. And in the working space itself, he is subjected to various forms of exploitation, physical, mental, and psychological, verbal abuse, and various forms they undergo. And subsequently, they're also pushed into sexual exploitation. And then there was case of Just Rights for Children Alliance and where there is one important in this particular case. What happened was the case came up before the High Court, which told that only if I am possessing a particular photograph, then there is no issue. Then it is not a crime in our country unless I distribute or something. But the Supreme Court reversed the judgment and told even if you're possessing pornographic materials, that is also an offense of the country. And very clearly, they gave a lot of guidelines in this particular case to tell very that what actions can be taken from the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act and Information Technology Act. And this is one of the landmark judgments, the latest judgment in our country, which highlighted tourism also as a factor of exploitation. And it also told it faced a lot of issues. And finally, the Supreme Court told that this is a ruling that different high courts, including those in Madhya Pradesh, Madras, Kerala, and Bombay, had different interpretations of the different subsection of Section 15 of the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. And the interpretation intended whether the accused meant to disseminate, transit, or utilize the materials for commercial purpose was the main source of inconsistency. In various high court have given various judgments. However, the Supreme Court told you are merely possessing a photograph of a child, which is of pornographic nature, sexually explicit nature, is also offense in our country. So these are some of the important landmark judgments which the Honorable Supreme Court and various high courts have passed. So even judiciary has played a very greater role in understanding that tourism is a factor for exploitation. And they have also given a lot of directions, and they've also given a lot of guidelines for tourism industry, governments, JJBs, child welfare committees, various boards, to start implementing and looking at there is a serious concern. Now everyone need to look at it and work together. But however, whether that togetherness is happening is the main question which we are also trying to address. And what was the conclusion and suggestions? Or some of the conclusion suggestions are that this problem of child exploitation tourism is not only a problem concerning India; it is a global problem. India is a transit plus receiving. We also send, we also receive. So we are in between a nation which is exploiting here as well, sending the children for further any other part of the world to get further exploited. And then there is always a myth or reality telling that it is only female children who are subjected to sexual exploitation. Various studies and our study also shows that it is not only female children, even male children are subjected to various forms of sexual exploitation and harassment as well. And but one of the thing is male children, it's very difficult to find out, or no one are seriously watching them. But female children, at least someone are watching. When a girl child walks with a foreign tourist, there are some measures which are taken. But a boy child, when they walk with foreign tourists, they are in fun. But so there's not looked into much. But there are studies which shows in tourism particularly, it is male child who is subjected to various forms of sexual abuse than female children. The numbers are more in male child. The other important aspect is it is not only foreign tourists who are exploiting our children, it is also domestic tourists as well. And they are classified into two categories. One is preferential sexual offenders and one is situational sexual offenders. When we tell preferential sexual offenders, they come with a very clear intention that we have to come and we want only this age group child and we want the child like this only. So they have a specific preference. They want a male, they are specific, or a female. They want the age group, they want their looks, and they want from this place. But situational child sexual offenders are not, they don't bother any child. According to the situation, a child, I have a person for whom I can exploit. So these are the two different categories of exploiters. But however, when we talk about preferential sexual exploiters, they are even more organized in exploitation. want a middleman to connect. They directly call the child that once I came, last time I came, so next time I'm coming, so we will meet. So their connections become even more easier. And their networking is so vast. So they take this child from here to their place or within the state somewhere or outside the state somewhere. But their connections are so closely networked. So finding something is very difficult because of the close network nowadays. And then the domestic tourists are also exploiters in our state. But however, most of the domestic tourists are situational abusers. They are not preferential abusers. So there are different patterns. The modus operandi of how these tourists work for while exploiting children are completely different in different perspectives as well. And then the other one is the reasons why there still we have poverty, we have unemployment, many of them face they get very little income which they are not happy with, and in this they are able to enjoy their life. They get good food to eat, good clothes to wear, good places to see, which otherwise they don't get. So they don't see themselves that this is a factor of serious concern. That is also a major finding. So with this, what I would recommend or what we were trying to suggest was that all the tourism industry need to implement the code.org very seriously, because once tourism industry, when we tell, most of the exploitation don't happen in big 7-star or 5-star hotels. It happens in small hotels, in homestays, in motels. It happens in street corners. Some of the abuses have also happened in burial grounds. So how do we keep watch of all these places is we should have local self-governing institutions working very strongly to combat. Along with them, we should have tourism department, Department of Women and Child, labor, anti-trafficking units also to work in a very collaborative approach so that the networking is spread across and they can try to combat these form of exploitations, and also to play a very watchdog scenario where everyone has to watch their children, our children. So it is everyone's duty to protect our children in the country. For that, there should be a collaborative approach and guidelines which they follow. And then our ultimate aim is one fine day that India will become a zero tolerance of child sexual abuse in tourism. That should be our goal, which everyone are working towards. There are many civil society organizations working on protection of children from various forms of exploitation. But however, tourism should also be inbuilt into that, because tourists are also a person who are exploiting our children. But if, as I told you, the main lacuna is we do not have even one case registered telling he's a tourist who has exploited our children in this particular place. So when data is not there, what are we trying to speak about? So these are major gaps as well. Still a lot to go. But however, one of the major thing is that many of them now understand that tourism is a factor contributing exploitation for children, and then tourism has increased, because of which exploitation of children are also increased. And tourism is exploiting children in the form of child sex tourism, pornography, online exploitation, trafficking, labor. In the name of child marriage, they get married, they take them to a place, then they're trafficked from there. And so they've acknowledged that tourism is a factor contributing to these various forms of exploitation. And apart from that, we have a lot of acts, legislation which have put in inbuilt protection mechanisms and also punishment mechanisms. And we have our judiciary playing a very prominent role in trying to also address these issues as well. So with all these various stakeholders, we feel that if all work together, definitely there can be change in our society, and definitely we can protect a lot of our children and prevent further children being subject to sexual harassment. So these are the social aspects which we all have to know. While we enjoy tourism, we are also supposed to beware that tourism is also contributing to these exploitations. So as a tourist, when I am going somewhere, I need to be accountable, responsible, and I should also take care of the children in the local destinations. So these are the major findings of our research and also from other researchers which has been taken.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your insights and so beautifully explained that we always thought that tourism always had the brightest sign. But be that as it may, you have shown us that what are the challenges, and we are quite sacrosanct that the government as such would help them to clip it. And we all have to contribute in this process. And those who have connected with us, they can watch the previous session done by ma'am with Mr. Subramaniam, and also the other channel sessions on Beyond Law CLC. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, stay blessed. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.